Right, we've covered the applique. I know you've enjoyed that section, and I really enjoyed how my piece turned out. So now the final tutorial is just a little bit about embroidery. It is a very basic tutorial just to give you an idea and hopefully some inspiration for your pieces. I'm not going to cover all the stitches because there's just so many fantastic embroidery stitches. Really, it's just all about giving an effect and starting you off. There will be full instructions of various stitches in the pack that you receive. Right, on to this. This isn't going to be a big section with every embroidery stitch. I know my colleague Karen is going to cover some embroidery, and there's lots of information and stuff out there. But I just wanted to give you an idea, again, what could be achieved with a little bit of freestyle embroidery, and just show you one of my favourite stitches, and another little bit of freestyle basic stuff. But don't worry, all full instructions for most used stitches will be in your pack. And again, this is all about creativity and an art piece, getting over your sentiment rather than a perfect embroidery piece. So this piece I've got here, this is a work in progress. And embroidery does take a long time, and embroidery does. And I guess this is going to evolve over the project. So this is using an old tea towel. It's a Rotherham tea towel, and I believe this bit is Bridgegate in Rotherham. And what I wanted to convey here is the beauty of how the wildlife came back during the pandemic. So I've already started work on my piece, and I want it to be a little bit surreal. So tea towels being appliqued on, as we've seen the method before. I got a bit carried away when I started to draw around it, and I quite liked actually these lines with the machine, so I left them in, and I think that gives it a lovely surreal effect. And then when I continue to embroider, I think that'll bring that out more. I've got here this lovely cute little deer. It's just an outline of a deer, and that is actually based on the true fact that during the pandemic, deers were seen roaming down High Street in Rotherham. I just thought that was amazing, and I like the idea of the outline there because it looks a little bit ghost-like. Again, the wildlife started flourishing, the trees, everything, the flowers, so I'm going to bring to life some of the trees and everything that's on this piece of fabric. So I've already started with some French knots. I'm just going to show you how to do a couple of French knots. You're not going to get to see the finished piece now because, as I say, there's a lot of work to do, but I just hope that this inspires you and gives you a couple of ideas. It will evolve. There's another wildlife piece I want to get in here, and that's a pheasant. I'm not going to cover that today, but all I've done is downloaded from the internet a very simple outline of a pheasant, and I'll do an outline shape as I've done with the deer and probably put it there, and then continue with the rest of the work. So we've got the embroidery hoop. I prefer a decent size there. I'm using that so you can see on the camera as well. But because we've appliqued this on and it is quite a stiff fabric now, don't worry if you've not got an embroidery hoop. You can do the French knot on this size. The embroidery hoop helps things keep even and the tension at the back, but it's not such a big issue on this, so don't worry if you've not got one. So if you're used to using these, dead simple. And I'm not going to be holding the fabric in this a long time. So I know some people actually bind the hoop so it doesn't mark the fabric, but I usually take mine out when I've finished working on it anyway. So there we are. So we've got that ready to do some French knots on here. So earlier on, at the beginning, after my introduction, when we were looking what's in the pack, there was a skein of embroidery threads like this. So all the colours will be random. They're not going to be the same as the ones that I've got here. But in my pack, I'm just going to use this light green because what I'm wanting to do is put a little bit light into the trees. Eventually I'll put some flowers. I might even add some beading in at a later date. But just for the sake of this, I'm going to separate one skein of the thread. Can you see there? I usually use 2 strands. You can use 3, you can use whatever you want. If you wanted to make the knots thicker and bigger, you could even use the whole 6 strands. And again, once you get your pack, you don't have to use all the colours in there. If you've got things you want to use, you can do that yourself. So I'm just going to thread this. This is nerve-wracking, threading a needle on camera. Try that bit. So I'm using a normal embroidery needle. And again, as long as it sews, that's fine. Yay, here we go. So I'm just going to put a straightforward knot at the end. Get rid of those. So I'm trying to do a bit of shading here on this tree. So I've got some dark greens, a little bit of a mossy green. So this is quite a light green. So I'm going to put this towards the top of the tree because I'm going to have the sun coming in on this side. So I've pulled the needle through. And all this is wrapping the thread round a couple of times on your needle, going back in, pushing your needle through and pull like that. And repeat. If you've done embroidery before, you've probably done this knot, the French knot, but I just love this effect. It's quite random. And you can work through. And as you start to build it up, it does give a lovely effect, which you can see there. So a couple of times round your needle and through. And I'm just going to carry on doing these random places in this area here. So that just gives you an idea of the French knot. And on these couple of pieces here that I've finished before, you can see that lovely effect. On this piece here, it's just organza's been placed randomly, and then I've just done some French knots and some flower shapes, and that's a lovely effect. And if you want the knots to be bigger, you can do more loops on the needle. So again, I'm sure it's something that you already know. And again, this is another piece that I've done that encompasses French knots. So you can see the effect there. So watch this space and see how this grows. But again, I hope that's giving you a couple of ideas. And then in a moment, I'm just going to move on to another piece just to show you just a random running stitch, back stitch. And hopefully that'll give you another bit of help and ideas. Right, I'm just going to do a simple shape on this section and just do simple back stitch and perhaps running stitch and just see how it goes. So this is nothing that I've rehearsed, it's just going to be a bit of freehand. So you can do flowers or motifs in whatever way. These are actually transfers that I've got out of embroidery magazines. They're usually free gifts. So what you do is just cut a shape out, iron it on. You don't have to do that. You can do something freehand and embroidery as well. So these are fabric markers. So what I'm going to do is just a simple line, and I'm hopefully going to try and make it into a little bit of a flower. So it is a fabric marker, it's green, and I'm going to go over that in some green thread with a back stitch. So again, from my skein of threads, I'm going to separate 2. sorted. So just simply, again like we did before, simple knot. I'm going to go up through the back of the thread. Now this is a little bit simpler. So you can see there just a very simple up and down stitch. So back stitch, I'm going to come up there, down there. I'm sure I'm telling you how to suck eggs on this bit, but up there and down. What you can do with this as well is add in, once you've done your back stitch piece, you could add in other colours, which I actually did on my little deer piece there. There's actually 2 colours as back stitch, and that gives it quite a nice effect there. So this is going to be a flower stalk. And it doesn't really matter if it's not straight or perfect, because flower stalks aren't. And also because I've got this textile marker underneath, that's actually giving it quite a nice effect as well. But simple outlines look really good. As I say, it's your design, you do what you want. If you don't fancy doing anything sort of free form, you can always use stencils, you can always get, as I say, download templates, draw around things. And now we've got the stalk done. So if we could... We've got a stalk, it's not a straight line, but that's going to be some part of a flower. So there, I might cut in. This is all just completely random. I might cut in and that might be the start. I'm going to put a flower on there. Same here. But just don't be afraid of experimenting. That's the beauty. So I've just started off there with one line. I'm now starting to build something random. That's gone a bit random, but oh, it's the wind bending it now. The thread's just pulled up. So then I've got a little shape that's random just from one line on the textile pen. So now I might choose to put some coloured French knots around it, and we've got a bit of a flower going there. And again, I'm just going to go completely random on this one. I'm just looking at these lovely fabric markers at the side of me. They might get involved in a moment, but I'm just going to do a French knot of these. Again, just random, and I think I'm going to draw some flowers around my knots. There are textile pens available, but Sharpies will do just as well. And if you really wanted to experiment, you could actually use some acrylic paint, because as I say, these aren't going to get washed, they're not going to be worn, they are going to be art pieces. Oh, I'm loving this. So completely random, some stalks, a few French knots, and a little bit of textile marker, and we've just got a nice little flower there. So I would encourage you to experiment. As I say, there's no clear rules, it's up to your imagination. We really want to get across your passion for Rotherham in this project, what's important to you, what message you'd like to get across. Quilts are actually an important part of social history, and that is really great that we've got this project in Rotherham, and I think it's a really good opportunity for all of us to have all our little say and put our little mark in Rotherham's social history. So have fun with it. And before we finish, I just want to show you and give you another few ideas of things that you could actually use in your projects. Right, as I said before, I want to show you some ideas and some resources that you could use that you think, no, that'd never work in a sewing or art project. So if you're not comfortable cutting out all the letters, you could use a stencil. Again, you could use Sharpies. You could do the background in acrylic paints. So I've got a stencil here. You could put your message on there with a stencil, or you could just do it freehand. So I'll just do an R on here for Rotherham. You could even use this as a template to do your stitching. It's entirely up to you. I like the idea of stencils as well, because that feels quite contemporary and urban. You could start to do Rotherham. It could be, any climate change, any wildlife. The themes that you could use, actually, there's a number of things. As I say, it could be things that are important to you. I know the environment's really important at the moment. Well, it's crucially important, and climate change. So that might be something that you want to bring out in your work. Resources that you can use. There's all sorts of things. I love this is an old T-shirt of mine, so I'm going to use some of these figures on another piece, and I love the fact that they've got big glasses on there, and I guess that the way I work, that's going to evolve into an exciting piece. So that's an old T-shirt. I've mentioned tea towels before. This is actually an old tote bag. It is hand painted by an artist, but I think that would look great, and embellished with some embroidery and perhaps putting some sort of message on there. I mentioned before the embroidery transfers. There's loads of those. There might be some, these are all free from magazines that I've had, but there might be some that you can download off the internet or send for. I mean, often you can get free patterns. And then this is a lovely, lovely, lovely piece of fabric that I really like, and I've already put on the Bonder web, ready to transfer onto a project. When I see it or when I feel it, I'll know what it's going to be. But that's all ready to go. And finally, sorry to turn my back, but this big piece here, it's a combination of most of the stuff I've covered today. So this is the Threads That Connect Us project for Rotherham, and I absolutely love this piece. So I created it, I undyed some of the calico, and I love the effect that gives. It's not perfect uniform blue, but I actually really like the effect. Rotherham here it's actually from an old tea towel, and I've cut out the relevant bits, appliqued it on. It's been quilted round, so that's when I was talking earlier, you can quilt round a picture or a shape, it doesn't have to be a letter. And then these coloured bits were actually all white on the tea towel, so I used fabric markers to pop a little bit of colour into them. And as I say, you could use Sharpies or any other. And then again, we've got the method that I showed you with the letters there. And these are all scraps of fabric. That's an old dress of mine. That's an old dress. Some of these are actually scraps from the scrub bags that I made in Rotherham for Rotherham Hospital. Again, you can see the fabric that I've just shown you there, that's in there. Some have been bags, some have been things that I've made for friends, but these are scraps of fabrics. And again, going back to the theme of our project, you know, it's threads that connect us. So enjoy your project, be creative. I think there will be means to ask any questions through the Flux website. So I would use that as your first point of call. There's going to be information in your packs. So just enjoy yourself, and I look forward to seeing the final pieces. And I can't wait to put them all together, and they will be on display in May in Rotherham, either in the Minster or Riverside. So this is so exciting for Rotherham. So just go for it.